Welcome to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBlanc, and I'm so excited that you're joining us today. We are going to have a fascinating conversation as usual as we learn from people all around the world at all ages and stages of life. Stay tuned as we shift our dementia care from crisis to comfort.
Here we go. What you think about, you will bring about.
Well, hi, and welcome back to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBlanc, and I know we're going to have a wonderful conversation today. If you liked our opening music, it's called Clarion Call by the Mark Arneson Band, and you can download that on any of your favorite music platforms. For those of you that are new to Alzheimer Speaks Radio, we're about sound information, not just sound bites. We like to have real conversations with real people all around the world. So that means people living with dementia, families, business professionals, authors, singers, songwriters, advocates, researchers, children who are out there making a difference. So maybe, just maybe, you can be our next guest. We would love to talk with you. You can reach out to me at radio@Alzheimer Speaks, and I would love to hear your story. Now, before I introduce our guest today, I want to do a few shout outs. And first, I'm going to cover a couple of support groups, because I think it's really important, especially with COVID, people are feeling lost. So Arthur's Memory Cafe, we have been doing since, I think 2011. And that is for people with dementia and their care partners. And we are doing that virtually. So anybody in the world can participate. We do it on the second and the fourth Wednesday of each month at 2:00 Eastern, 1:00 Central. So that would be noon Mountain Time and 11 a.m. Pacific time. We usually run about an hour and a half with those, depending on how many people show up. So again, Arthur's Memory Cafe, and then Brookdale North Oaks and the Shoreview Community Center host a Caregiver Connect. And we normally do that in person at the last day of each month, and that would be at 10 a.m. Central Time. I think we're probably going to go virtual again the end of this month, just because the virus is so bad. We did it last month as well, and it was really well received. But you can register for that by either reaching out to me or calling 763-913-6140. What else? I want to mention, of course, Dementia Map. Dementia Map is a global resource directory. I'm thrilled to have developed with Dave Wiedrich, who has the Memory Cafe directories for 5 countries. This is something near and dear to my heart, something I wanted for 37 years. We have 150 different categories that people can search. We made it really easy, so nobody has to sign in, have an account, feel like they're going to be vulnerable to getting hacked or having to remember another password, because we know we're all sick of that. And so it's very, very easy to use. And if you have a service product or tool or would like to be part of that, you can go to Dementia Map and sign up for a free listing. Or I also do market strategy meetings with people. And I also do support groups and family meetings so that I can teach them how to maneuver through. So again, just reach out to me at radio@alzheimerspeaks.com. Then let's see, Picnic Health. You might not have heard about them, but they are an important Alzheimer's disease research project. And with Picnic Health, what you can do is you can sign up. And when you do, you get $25. You go to picnichealth.com/speaks. And they collect and digitize all of your medical records into one online account. And then you can consent to share that anonymized information of your records with medical researchers who can find things out that they wouldn't have found out in a normal, everyday clinical trial. And so know that by sharing this real world information, you are pushing things forward and letting them see a different side of the healthcare journey. And if you care for somebody with dementia, you can also sign them up and make an account for them as well. Again, go to picnichealth.com/speaks. We are going to hear from the footbar walker, and then we will be right back.
I love the footbar walker, and let me tell you why. It is the option for my toolbox that I've been waiting for. Let's be honest, there are some clients who, despite our best rehab efforts, just aren't able to return to performing a sit-to-stand transfer on their own. Now I can offer my caregivers an easier, safer option that doesn't involve hoisting their loved one up from a sitting position. I don't recommend this walker for all of my clients, but I do recommend this walker for those caregivers looking for an easier, safer option with transfers. I would also encourage other therapists to add this walker to their toolbox. It's kind of like having my own mobile parallel bars for the client to pull up on. Whether it's a family caregiver at home helping a loved one with Parkinson's or dementia, CNAs in a long-term care facility assisting their patients, or therapists adapting to client and caregiver-specific needs, we now have a very safe and effective option to offer in the footbar walker. Check this product out at thefootbarwalker.com. That's it for today from Adaptive Equipment and Caregiving Corner. Have a great day, and don't forget, if you can't do it, adapt it.
Well, I am really excited about today's show. We are going to be talking about a brand new organization called Dementia Minds. And our guests are all board of directors and executive directors of the National Council of Dementia Minds. They are all international speakers. They're relentless when it comes to dementia advocacy, and they are also consultants. So the National Council of Dementia Minds is proud to be the first nonprofit organization actually governed by persons living with dementia. So I'm going to introduce everybody we have on the screen here with us today. And I'm going to go with Bonnie Erickson first. She is the board president and former program analyst for the Department of Homeland Security. And Bonnie was diagnosed with white matter disease and vascular dementia in 2017. So welcome, Bonnie. Next is Brian LeBlanc, and he is the board vice president, and he is a former marketing and public relations executive. Brian was diagnosed with young onset Alzheimer's disease in 2014, and then later was diagnosed with white matter and vascular dementia. So welcome, Brian. So Stephen Barbieri serves as the board treasurer, and he is a former VP and district manager for Wells Fargo. Stephen was diagnosed with CTE, which is what we hear a lot of the NFL players and hockey players getting, and he was diagnosed with that in 2011. So welcome, Stephen.
Thank you.
And next is Mark Roberts. And Mark Roberts serves as the board secretary, and he is a former skilled tradesman. And he was diagnosed with vascular dementia in 2014. So we're thrilled to have you with us as well, Mark. So thank you. And then Brenda Roberts is the wife of Mark, and she serves as the executive director. So welcome to you, Brenda, and thanks for pulling this group of fabulous people together.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thanks for having us.
So normally I ask everybody before I kind of get into my line of questioning is, have you been touched by dementia? And that's pretty obvious through the introductions. But what I'd like to have each of you just throw in briefly, and I'll point a question to each of you as I go, but you know, how has it changed your life living with dementia? And Bonnie, I'll go to you first.
Well, to be totally honest, it has changed my life a great deal. You know, I had to leave work, which at 58, I wasn't quite ready for. So there was financial change. There was friend change. There was depression change. And after finally getting to the acceptance point, there is a new part of my life through advocacy and working with this amazing group of people, to include even a bigger group beyond us. So, you know, there was some negatives, but now I'm into the positive side of things, and I'm thankful for that.
Wonderful. Thank you. Brian, how about you? How has dementia changed your life?
Well, it started years ago, Lori, and no, just kidding. It kind of like what Bonnie said. It's kind of a big smack in the face that you know that there are signs that have been happening, but then when you hear the word Alzheimer's, it just shakes you. It changes things drastically. Like Bonnie, also, I lost my job when I was 54. And no, I'm sorry. It was later than that. But I haven't held a job for, I guess the past 5 or 6 years. And that was a big part of my life. And, but then through that, I also went through a divorce, and, but I am happily married again. I'm going to get it right this time. And, but Maureen Rulison is also a certified advocate, and she helps individuals like all of us get into care communities, gives them information that they need to handle their monies. And so she sort of knows what to do, when to do it, and how to do it very, very well. And I can be a bit of a handful at times, but I'm just very lucky. So thank you for asking.
You snagged one that knows how to work with you well. That's good. That's good.
Yeah, you're not kidding, huh? Yay for
Glad
me.
to hear that. Stephen, how about you? How has dementia changed your life?
Well, it was pretty devastating because I was diagnosed at the age of 51. Again, I was in vice president, district manager at Wells Fargo Bank. So very high, stressful job. I was managing 12 Wells Fargo's, large district. My wife was a school teacher at the time, and we had 3 children at home. So it was pretty rough when I got it, because we weren't expecting that type of a diagnosis when we went to see the doctor. But I always tell everybody, I try and count my blessings, not my challenges. So I ended up having to retire at age 51, but I was very fortunate. I had purchased long-term disability through my work, and somebody through work had called me and let me know, and I was able to fill out the paperwork. So financially, we were okay because of that. So I was very blessed with that. But it gave me my life back, because I was missing out on my kids' football games, wrestling matches, water polo things, because I was working till, the banks were open till 6 o'clock. Branches were open on Saturdays. So I wasn't seeing my family as much. So my plans were actually to retire at 55 so I could spend more time with the kids. But I look at it as a blessing that I got 4 extra years at home with my kids to spend that time with them. And I always tell people, I never expect anyone to do something I'm not willing to do myself. So I didn't want to sit back and just wait for a cure to be found. I actually got into a clinical trial at UCSF up in San Francisco, became an advocate, self-educated in a sense of, I try and read as much as I can. It's funny, sometimes when I go see my neurologist, and she's the chief neurologist at Kaiser, sometimes I'm educating her versus her educating me. It's like half the time she's writing notes from, okay, Stephen, what did you experience and how are things going with you now trying CBD and different things. So basically, dementia is a big part of my life because of the changes. But again, I'm trying to be out there because, like I said at the beginning, I'm not waiting for a cure to be found. I want to be part of it.
I love that. And I love that you are taking the attitude of gratitude. When you mentioned about, educating the doctors, I saw everyone's head shaking. Like, that's typically what I hear from everybody. And yet everyone goes to the doctor thinking they have all the answers. And it's so important for people with dementia and their families to speak up and tell them what's really happening. The books don't have it all down for sure. Mark, how about you? How did your life change once you were diagnosed?
Well, I guess when I think about when I was told, there was so much, I should say, that there was so much other things going on with anger and not remembering, and then frustrated with this, and not being a nice person, and not a loving husband or a father. But when I had them all in the same room, when the counselor was just saying, after we've had all these tests, that I had dementia. Now, I just sunk in my seat. I was so relieved that I finally found what was wrong. I knew I was losing my family because I was showing them no love at all, or attention, or encouragement like I normally did. And I'm just an SOB. And to find out that finally what the heck's going on is one of the best things that ever happened to me, because that set me down to look at what's happening around me, start listening to other people. And Brenda had worked in the field prior to this with a lot of dementia. And so she, pitched right in, like, we need to look at this. But I could work with her then. It seemed like I was coherent to listen. And I have done that right along. I know I needed to make major changes. I went for counseling. Brenda went with me, and I took my children a couple times, and we were able to recover real quick, as far as not dwelling on, he's got dementia, don't say this, or that's why he does that. So everybody come to an understanding what dementia was as far as my reactions, how I felt, why I would cry or whatever. So ever since then, my attitude has been up. You can't do any more. I've already hit the basement, and like Stephen said, it's just up. You have to pick up the pieces and make the best of it. And I'm not one to be an unhappy person. I always like to have a lot of fun and make life easy for everybody. And now I make it real easy for my family. They carry a whip with them. So it's, I really appreciate what I got to learn from the counselors, and then also the people who give me the tests were very down to earth, and they would tell me they're not the big experts, but they would tell me what I had, and this is what you kind of would look for. Mm-hmm. So I was, to that point, I felt I was really blessed, and I've changed my life. You have to.
Yeah. When you mentioned feeling that sense of relief, again, that's something I hear just about everybody who gets diagnosed say, because this is a hard journey to get diagnosed,
Yes.
There's so many different things that it could be. And so people, I think, are really surprised when they hear that there's this relief. But, when you're going in your mind, what's wrong? I know something's wrong, and you don't have any answers, then you don't have a path to follow. And it just makes so much sense. So thank you for sharing that. Brenda, when dementia knocked on your door, how did it change your life?
Well, I have to capitalize on what Mark said in terms of we were not at a good spot, in our relationship, because I did not recognize his early signs and symptoms as signs and symptoms of dementia. And I think that it's pretty common for people living with dementia, or before they get a young onset diagnosis, it's not uncommon that relationships are severed or they lose a job before they get their diagnosis. And so Mark alluded to, and a lot of people ask about this, that he was a very angry man at that time, and he had a big temper going on, and it took a toll on the relationship. But now, after he got his diagnosis, now I have a lot of women coming like, okay, so he, is he still angry? And, yeah, I mean, everybody gets angry, but the diagnosis let us do was figure out, okay, so the work was too much stress. So we changed the environment, what we were living, and then, he changed. And so, so we were able to restore our relationship. So from that personal perspective. And then, Lori, I just have to say, after Mark was diagnosed, I went back to school. I ran around the country trying to get education and training. But like you interview and talk to people living with dementia. It wasn't until I really started listening to the people living with dementia that I really started learning. And what I have to say is these guys and these people here today and the other people in our organization, they're always saying, oh, thank you, Brenda. Thank you, Brenda. I'm like, oh my gosh, I am so thankful that I get this opportunity. And our paths in life would have never crossed with many, many of the people that we get to meet. And so, is it tough? You betcha. There's tough times living with dementia. But just like Stephen and the others have said, Mark, we try to look at the positive side. I mean, what other choice? We have one life to live, and we're going to live it the best we can.
Yeah. Well, and I'm with you, Brenda. People living and being diagnosed or caring for somebody who are in the trenches, to me, those are the true experts. Those are the people we have to listen to if we're going to make true change, if we are really going to bend the curve here and meet the needs. So often, we followed a medical and academic model that scientifically maybe made sense, but when no one's in touch with what's really going on, you can have one conversation with one person with dementia and go, oh, that's not going to work at all, is it? And they've spent maybe thousands of hours trying to develop something. I mean, we've got to have inclusion in this. We just have to. So again, honored that you're all here today because I know I'm going to learn. Let's start with, how did Dementia Minds get started? And Stephen, I'm going to throw that to you.
Well, I actually have to say two thank yous. One to Brenda, which is huge, and the other one is the social media, because we're all across the country. I used to live in California. I just moved to Idaho. Bonnie's in Montana. Brian's in Florida now, and Mark's in Michigan. So, and then we had other people that joined as well. There was 8 of us. So actually it was something just out on social media. Brenda actually had put it out about she wanted to get a group together to do a presentation in Michigan. And it was just something that I saw, and I think because I have quite a few friends and friends I've met through different social media groups on Facebook and Instagram and some of the other ones, is that it was just out there. So some of us were talking, are you going to do it? That sounds interesting. And like I said, I'm not sitting back waiting. I want to be a part of it. So when I saw this as another opportunity, and it made sense because it was getting people like me together. That was the biggest thing. And I think maybe some others can share the same things. That when I first got diagnosed, I felt like I was the only person. I didn't think there was anybody like me. And then when I saw the Alzheimer's Association, I said, I don't have Alzheimer's. I have CTE, so they can't help me. But I was misinformed because of the way you hear about that organization. So I was looking for people like me. And some of the groups I had gotten into earlier, I was 51 at the time when I got diagnosed. So they're putting me in groups with people in their 70s or 80s or whatever. And to be honest, we were at a different point in our lives. And also I was at early stage. So we couldn't really relate to some of the things that we were talking about. So I was looking for people closer to my age, had similar life experiences, something that I could learn from. Because to be honest with you, other groups I had been in, I felt like I was a teacher. I'd show up and there was a teacher in the class, but I was sharing. And then I would turn around and say, okay. And I wasn't feeling like I was getting anything back. Whereas in this group, the great thing is I get like reinsurance. Like if you notice that when all of us are talking, what are the rest of us doing? Because we're saying, yep, that happens to me. Yep, that's similar to me. I have to take a nap. I get stressed. I get angry. And now it makes me feel like, okay, I'm not alone. I'm not different. This is my new normal. And at the same time, then, I was sharing with my wife, she used to get upset when she was still working. She'd leave for work in the morning and I'd be in bed. She'd come home around 3:00 and I'd be in bed, but I had gone to the gym and done other things. And she was very upset, thinking I was laying around, but she didn't realize that a lot of people in the late afternoon get tired mentally and you need that time out. So once I told her, I say, everybody in my group takes a nap, babe. It's not just me. I'm not being lazy. So I think it made me feel normal is what it did. And I'm extremely thankful to Brenda for putting out that simple email thing out on Facebook, and all of us responded, and we've all become very good friends. I'm very happy to say that we've become very good friends.
Social media is so important, and yet so many families don't know how many resources are out there. So I'm glad that you mentioned that. And I'm glad that you mentioned it's your new normal, because I get really tired of people saying dementia is not normal aging. And it's like, it is for a large amount of the population. And that affects not just the person with dementia, but their circle as well. And so I think we really do have to talk about this realistically being a new normal. The numbers are climbing, now they're talking with COVID, it might increase even more. And, it is just something, when you're not, nobody wants to not be normal, and we all have our own normals. And so I think part of it is the verbiage that drives me bonkers on that too. So thank you, Stephen. Mark, what is the mission of the National Council of Dementia Minds?
Well, it's pretty simple. Our mission is to build groups, not great big groups, but to help bring people together that can understand when you explain something like, this is happening to me, and someone pipes up in the group, I can help you with that. This is what happened to me. And they're like, wow, I didn't think about doing it that way, or visiting that part of the medical field. So we're in the process of building different groups that you can have some across the country where you can feel comfortable and come and sit down and start your conversation at whatever level you are, and you'll fit right in. And we welcome all the people that way. It is it's a real close group, and very few people that we have over the last 2 years have even not show up at some of the meetings or send emails to Brenda and I, and especially with the other folks here, we get emails. So it's a new norm. That's the only thing I can think of that really, it's a new life. It's a new norm. You don't have to do it if you don't want to, but we're here to catch you if you slip up. And it's only out of love that we're doing this. It satisfies us a great deal and makes us feel really good, makes us feel wanted, like we were working. And I think it's one of the blessings that Dementia Mind has that's at the top of their list, and that is giving somebody actually that could lean on someone else and get comfortable with it, and even find somebody that may have an answer for you for your question. And to me, what more do you want to get started? And for that, those kind of things last forever till the day that doesn't happen anymore. And like Steve says, we've meet with a lot of different groups, Brenda and I, and we all do, but there's a lot of sharing of love and concern. And I wish work was like that. When I was working, you'd hear somebody cussing you out and you're like, what'd I do? But it's not like that anymore. It's reaching out. It's when we've been in groups with different conferences and stuff, it's really, people just draw right in together, and you don't know who's normal or who's got dementia. So it's a really good thing. I feel great about it. It's really picked up my spirits and has given me something to live for.
Well, I think, you're talking about building community and peer support. And a lot of times what I hear from people going through this, especially before diagnosis, they kind of pull back because they're, or friends and family have pulled away. I mean, all of those types of things. And you feel kind of isolated and unknown in terms of what you're dealing with. And that everybody wants to be part of a group. Everybody wants to feel purposeful. And then in addition, you're pulling people together to support, not to fix, because there's not a fix, but there's lots of different ways to adapt and to live well. And what I have found in this industry for a long time, my mom lived with it for 30 years, was there wasn't anybody talking about what really was going on. And there was this hiding of the anger and the frustration and the depression. And, we can't move through it if we don't name it, and find different ways to help us move through those types of things. So, I like the giving hope. I think so often too, people think, well, I have nothing to give, but we're always, 10 steps behind somebody and 10 steps ahead of somebody else. And I think people find that really quickly in a group like this. Stephen, you had a comment?
Yeah, it's like Mark said, we advocate, educate, and support. Those are the main three things we do. And that the nice thing is that they're hearing, I use this example, they're hearing firsthand information, lived experiences with people living with dementia. And you notice how I use the word dementia, because I can't say Alzheimer's because I don't have that. Bonnie doesn't have that. It's the nice thing is that we have people that had Lewy body disease, white matter disease, frontal temporal lobe dementia, CT. We had different things. So when somebody does hear from our group, they're hearing a very broad point. And like we had people with Lewy bodies. We had a gentleman that was on our board that was with Lewy bodies. I could talk to them and they could have shared experiences. So I kind of use the example of, if you're going to have a baby, do you want to go see a doctor, a woman doctor or a male doctor? And then think about that. The woman has had 5 babies. So she's actually lived having a baby, yet you're hearing from a male doctor who's never had a baby. And he's trying to tell the wife or the woman everything that's going to go. So I just know if I had to choose, if I was a woman having a baby, I'd want somebody, a doctor that had 5 babies already, that had lived experience versus a doctor that's just telling me what he thinks or what he's read.
Yep. Just push it through. Yeah, get over it. Yeah. So wonderful. Thank you for those comments. Bonnie, have you had a memorable moment from one of the sessions or groups that you've been involved in with Dementia Minds?
Well, to be totally honest, I have several. I'll tell you 2 quickly. One was our very first conference in Michigan there, put on by MALA, Michigan Assisted Living Association. We came together and this was the project that Stephen was talking about that Brenda had solicited for. And we each had a part that was dear to our heart. For example, it was called The Journey, and it takes you from kind of the beginning, something's wrong with me, to the diagnosis part, to the grieving part and all the stages in grieving, to the, all right, pull myself up on my bootstraps and go down the road with the best positive attitude that I can. And so we each worked really hard on our scripts, and we performed the production at this conference. And there was, I think, I might be wrong, about 450 people there. And there wasn't a dry eye in the place. You could have heard a pin drop. And they were so interested to hear from us and what it was like for us. And so afterwards, and then the mingling afterwards with everybody and being able to talk and share. And they were mostly professional people or facility owners and doctors and nurses and some people, others with dementia as well. So that was one of my very first ones. And then my other one, because my passion is the diagnosis process, was to talk to a medical, at the University of Michigan, a medical class. And we all got together and, kind of discussed various issues and topics. But, I was really, really hoping and stressing and educating on the diagnosis process. Like you've heard, Lori, you've said that you've kind of, been in this game for a long, long time. And it just blows me away. My doctor told me to go live my life. And a lot of my friends heard, go get your affairs in order. Well, what does that mean? What are you saying? I have a day, I have a year, I have a month. It's so confusing. And so I advocate for resources when I'm walking out the door, whether the doctor can give them to me or not, or give me the answers himself. If he could just hand me someplace, because I floundered out here online trying to find my place in the world until Dementia Minds came along. And yay, thank goodness. And it would be so nice for so many people like you, they don't know where to go. It would be so nice if some of the reputable non-for-profits or for-profits, there was a resource book, like you get when you maybe have a different type of diagnosis. My husband came home with a binder. We both sat down and read it. I just came home with Go Live Your Life and started making a will. That was the difference in that scenario. So
well, and that's what bothered me too. And like I said, my mom's been gone since 2014. She lived 30 years. That scenario has not changed all over the world for the most part. And think of the difference that would be made is if people, instead of on their way out the door, were saying, being told, get your affairs in order. And here's some resources for you to connect with. That's why we created the Dementia Map, Global Resource Directory. And there's so much stuff out there that people don't know about. And we'd love you guys to be part of that as well. And to even, list your group in different ways so it's easily found in the 150 different categories that we have, to be able to, for people to be able to find what it is they need. And families are demanding that. And doctors and clinics need to take this on, as well as social workers and everything else. All the staff is stretched too much, and we've got to work together to do a better job. That's just the bottom line. I really totally resonate with that so deeply, because it's saddened me in all these years that no one stepped forward to do that and to make a difference. And there's no reason we can't work together to do that. We've got people living with dementia that are listed on there because they have great resources. They've got blogs or videos, or they've written a book or whatever, family members, researchers, clinical trials, a little bit of everything. But let a family decide what's right for them. And let their friends be able to access this information easily too, because there's a big, I think, paradigm that has to shift as well. And that is that a lot of organizations, one, they only like to give out their own information because they're too scared of the competition, instead of differentiating themselves and letting people know why they're different. Or, oh my God, it's okay if you attend more than one group of different organizations. People have that right. But there's this belief that, and I hear this from businesses a lot, well, we have everything we need right here. No, you don't. Because we wouldn't have dementia-friendly communities. We wouldn't have memory cafes if we weren't talking to people around the world, because those were their ideas. So get out of your bubble and realize that families don't all live in the same city and don't know everything, and that there are so many resources that can be available to people virtually, and much of them are free, which is another big hurdle for people. So I'm going to get off my little soapbox there, but that just drives me nuts. And I totally agree with you on that. Brian, I want to go to you next, because you've said on more than one occasion that, support groups, they offer education and they bring you great satisfaction and they provide you purpose and meaning. Can you tell us more about that?
Well, sure. When we do get in front of audiences and give our go through our presentations and so forth, the amount of people that come afterwards and come up to us, and they're either thanking us, they're asking questions about their husband, wife, mother, father, whatever it is. They're asking for advice on what to do, with them. They've just been diagnosed with something. So what do we do for our next step? And that's kind of we feed off of that. It's an energy that comes into us, and we, when you get into this, you're trying to find your niche, and trying to find out where you belong. And this is where we belong. We belong in this whole atmosphere. But we also do a lot of stuff on social media, as Stephen had said earlier. We write a lot. We either on blogs or just different posts and so forth. Some of them just fall by the wayside. Other posts get a more of a response because it clicks with certain people. Mm-hmm. The newly diagnosed, they are. Well, let me back up a second. When they go to their neurologist to get a diagnosis, that has been the thorn in so many sides, because of the fact that they don't really give you a lot of information as what to do. And I know you've heard that over and over and over again. Well, they start reaching out to different areas, and some of them fall on us. And so we basically take them virtually by the hand and say, okay, what you said, you wanted us to tell you what we did previous to our diagnosis. Well, we asked them the same questions. Let's say, what did you do? What made you happy when you were working? And just you're pulling information out so that you can start a conversation with that person. And when they walk away, they always thank us. There's always a thank you involved, which meant we reached them in some sort of reaching. I don't know how to do that, but we also do, like I said, the in-person seminars. I think that's our favorite thing. Yes, it is. It's getting in front of the audience, and they're okay. The stereotype is they say they're hearing, oh, these people with Alzheimer's disease or MCI or vascular dementia and so forth, they're coming to speak. And so they're expecting people that are probably on their last stage. And then here we come. And we start talking, and they just, you could just see them smiling. Some people are crying because no one has talked to them like that. Mm-hmm. And here we are. We're talking to them and telling them what's going on. Afterwards, we're handing out cards, and yes, if you have a question, don't hesitate to call. We'll help you as much as we possibly can. But man, we just feed off of that, and it's absolutely wonderful. But it not only allows us to be in that person-to-person space, but for us, like I said, it's already something that we've experienced. But every experience that we do experience is brand new. A lot of the times we might see the same people, and We don't remember them. And so we have to have a little prodding sometimes to get them to tell us, where did you meet us before? and not trying to sound like, oh, I forgot all about you. And so, but this whole organization is just built for people that are living with a dementia-related illness. I know we talk a lot about Alzheimer's, but there's so many other diseases that fall under that dementia umbrella. And look at us. We're varied in the diseases that we have. Of course, the most common being Alzheimer's, but there's a lot of us. Hundreds of thousands of people are out there. And
how many people are misdiagnosed? They're told Alzheimer's and then whoops, nope, you're over here. So that happens with a lot of people too. And
exactly.
And so to have the conversation, to be inclusive, I think is just so very important. And what you guys are doing to me is what I call emotional based training. You're allowing people to laugh and cry. You're allowing them to feel the need to change and to give them hope. I'll never forget, and I'm sure you guys have had this too. I was speaking one time and I was talking about our personal experiences. And I had one man sit, he was in the front table and he sobbing hysterically. I mean, just sobbing hysterically. And I got done and I went down and I said, "Are you okay?" And he said, I'm so sorry. He said, "I just couldn't control myself." And one of his peers ran out and got him a roll of toilet paper and plopped it down because he couldn't even move. He was just frozen, crying. Oh. And I said, "Is there anything I can do to help?" And he said, you've already helped. And I said, he says, the stories, he says, "I have been an administrator of a nursing home for 21 years. And all the information I was giving people, I really thought my heart was correct. My dad now has it, and I know I'm doing everything wrong. And I feel so bad for those families." Hearing real stories from real people and people living with dementia. I mean, I've seen the reactions of the crowd, like you said, just being memorized because they're like, "Oh my God, this isn't what I thought." They're expecting you to be rolled out in a wheelchair, say a couple of things, and you're up there, going back and forth and getting them to laugh and sharing your experiences, and they're blown away. But that's all part of the stigma that has to change. And what a better way to do that, to show people everyone's not in their end stages. People have insights and they have voices and they live with purpose and they're fun individuals that you want to hang out with. And like, I think it might have been Mark where you had said, you can't tell who's who in a group, and that's the way it should be. That's the way it should be.
We're stigma fighters.
Yeah, exactly. You have to make up little spray cans for conferences. That would be really cute.
Maybe with some silly string,
Yeah, exactly. Go to the dollar store, pick up a bunch of them. Brenda, I want to go to you. And Brian, thank you for all of that. I appreciate it. Why don't you tell us about the achievements that the National Council of Dementia Minds has made to date? Because you haven't been around that long.
And I just, I have this list of things that they've achieved. But you know what? When I sit here and listen, the achievement is transformation. The achievement is transformation in their lives, transformation in my life, transformation in the lives of those people that we interact with. I mean, we are making a difference. So that's the number one thing. And it's hard to deny that after listening to what you guys have to say. But what's so phenomenal is we started out as a group of 8 friends. And one of the things we said early on was, what's really sad are all the dementia advocates that are out there. We all know each other. And we're like, well, why is that sad? It's sad because it means the number is small, right? There's a few, so we only know. And so Mark said our mission, develop a group in every community. I mean, we want everybody to have this opportunity to have their life transformed after diagnosis. You're right, Laura, you said about how the situation hasn't changed. I was thinking, oh, I was hoping that after Mark was diagnosed 7-8 years ago, that it would be different even now. But we just had a guy join our group and say, the doctor said it wouldn't do me any good. And then the wife did work, and she said it was so hard to find you. I'm so glad we connected, but it was so hard to find. We can't be hard to find. Like you talked about the Dementia Maps program and stuff. I mean, we have to be out there, and so we just want to have a group in every community. I know that when Bonnie, I'll call you out, Bonnie, I know that she really searched for one in her own home community and couldn't find. Stephen mentioned he didn't feel like he connected quite right with the group. You're right. You also said, Lori, there's lots of groups. Everybody picks and chooses what group works best for them. And our group, it was so fun, is the part, we do the support, we do the connectedness. But as Brian just described, and others hinted to it, when you're out doing that training, all of a sudden, when you're thanked and you're recognized, all of a sudden, you're sitting up a little straighter and you're feeling a little better because you are a contributing member to our society. You're making a difference in the lives of people today. These guys are making the difference in lives of people who are coming to the groups today, and they're paving the road for the future. So I'd be remiss if I didn't say a few things. Like, we just became a not-for-profit in May. We've been together for a couple of years prior to that. But we said, hey, we have a secret sauce. We don't need to keep it a secret anymore, because we went from one group to 2 groups to 3 groups with a waiting list of people who want to be in a group. So we're like, we have to. And so we have a greater community in terms of, we have the groups, and then we kind of have a holding tank of, we're trying to keep people engaged until we get new groups. And so on the drawing boards are 4 new groups in 2022, and building that infrastructure really sound so that then we can go nationwide and have groups everywhere. So this past year, just our past year, we did 30 educational events for nearly 4,000 people. And we're brand new, pretty. And then who, you might ask, who attends our events? People living with dementia, care partners. We love talking to the medical students, one of our favorite groups to talk to. We do assisted living providers, healthcare providers. We've brought researchers into our group and schooled them too, haven't we, you guys? So the world is our audience. And so our vision is to transform the world's view of persons living with neurocognitive disease or disorders. And I think if you take a look at the faces here and their voices, that's what they're doing. I'd say that's our achievement.
That's pretty spectacular stuff that you're doing. And I know a lot of people will probably be reaching out to you after this show. It's so important to connect people and to let their voices be heard. Even when, a lot of people will join a group and think, no, I'll just listen, or I'm going because they told me I had to. But people walk out of these groups with immediate friendships. They kind of remind me of the memory cafes. There's just this instant connection and these deep conversations. People aren't talking about the weather and the sports, and unless it's their kids' game or something like that. But they're talking about meaningful stuff in their life, and we have so little of that in this fluff and perfect world that everyone's trying to project themselves into. And people are so accepting and loving and supportive. And you just don't find that in everyday friendships out there nowadays. And so it really is important. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, a lot of people, but even myself, the resources that have been given to me is that how I can handle it just left me a little bit. Hang on. Is when this happens to me, for an example, I couldn't find this key that I had put on a thing that was yellow on it. And when I came to the group and said, I could not find this key, I have looked top and bottom. Brenda said, yeah, I saw you were doing something, but, and she just left it at that. but I was very frustrated that I was a house key. I thought I had lost that. Somebody could get it. But somebody said, well, yeah, that's happened to me. And it went right down the list with all these people. Oh yeah, that's happened to me too. And you got to give it a chance, and don't hurry about it. Just relax, and you'll find it. And I said, well, I put it right on the table. And when I went back, I looked at the table. I'll be darned. I've been looking for that key all week, and here it is, still at the same spot. Now, dementia is a weird disease, man. I'll tell you, it does some strange stuff. And if I hadn't have talked to those people about not giving up, and this is what's happened to me, and I was getting very angry with myself, but when they told me, oh, just let it go, it'll come up, don't, if you think about it, go by wherever you thought you left it. What can I say? They were right. I didn't have to pay a big doctor bill for some guy to tell me, hey, you left it on the table right where you were the first time. So, I mean, I need the explanation of how I survived through some of these things. And a doctor can't tell you, a counselor can't tell you, but this group right here told me. And, it's made a difference in my life on living with dementia every day. And I really have been blessed by that with the different groups, but especially this group. They pick up on that stuff. They know that, yeah, that's frustrating. That happened to me. So, I mean, it's good to know that you had those people you can reach out to and hold, they really hold you and say, oh, just calm down and you'll find it. And you don't know how many times that's happened. In fact, it just happened again. I had bought a scraper for the grill, and I thought I hooked it up on the grill. And yesterday, I'd been looking all week, and I found it in my truck in the back seat. And I got to think about it. Oh, yeah, I put that on the grill, but then I went back, took it off, and put it in the truck. So, I mean, what the heck? But you got to laugh about it. It's just an everyday occurrence for some of us, and people have different things. Bonnie keeps going out to those cheap stores buying coffee cups because she can't hit the counter. So it's we have a good laugh about it. It's the way it is.
Well, and I think that's a good point too. Laughter is really important, and sometimes people give that up when a disease hits. But to me, that is like a critical thing to keep. Go ahead, Brian. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's all right. I was going to tell Mark, I'm very sorry for that, because that was me. I'd fly, to there and move the key to a different spot. And, Brenda helped a couple of times. Tracy helped a couple of times, just to kind of keep you on your toes,
Yeah.
All right.
Great. Well, I do have one last question, and I'm going to throw this to Bonnie first, and that is, what would you tell someone who is just diagnosed?
I think the first thing I would do, until we get those doctors to change the delivery, is to tell them, yes, there is hope, because you leave pretty hopeless oftentimes. So yes, there is hope. I myself am very passionate about moving forward faster. I kind of got lost for a good 16, 18 months in the darkness. I didn't know where to go. I couldn't get a support group going in my own community. It wasn't until I found some things through the internet, and they're not on the first page when you key in, because we all know what's on the very first page and probably the second page too. But that there is life after diagnosis. And I was a big self-stigma person. I instantly thought, because I wasn't given hope when I left the doctor's office, I instantly thought, late stage. Does that come tomorrow? Does that come, how quickly does that get here? So, and then you scour the internet and get a whole bunch of bad information, where I finally found a support group, and the people looking back at me in a forum like this told me they had been diagnosed 8, 10, 12, 15 years ago. I mean, it was like, whew, I couldn't believe it. It was a huge, huge gift to be with like-kind SMEs, subject matter experts, on the living well with. And from that, I learned I want to do that. I want to pass along hope, and I want to advocate, and I want to teach the laymen out there that don't know what it's like to have a diagnosis like this, that yes, there is hope after diagnosis. And I'm going down with that motto. So
wonderful. I think that's great. I think one of the things too that would be helpful for a doctor is just to even say the phrase something like social engagement is critical to a good life, period.
Yes.
It's good before dementia, and it's critical now. And I know there's not near enough research on that, but to me, I think that's why my mom lived 30 years. I think that's why a lot of people are living 10, 15, 20 years with this disease, because they feel purposeful, they feel engaged, they feel of value. They're not just a diagnosis. And I hate even using the word person-centered, because I really think it's relationship-based care for one another. If you're diagnosed or not, nobody wants to be the target of the world has to evolve around you and modify to you. You want to be able to modify to your world as well, and to be able to adapt, and to be able to give back, and to be able to care and have that received. And so I think that is extremely important. And I'm going to point out a little stronger than you did, Bonnie, but I'm real tired of the pay for play in terms of Googling, because it's doing a big disjustice, and the Google gods will probably come down on me. But I think that's one of the reasons our world is in a mess. People think they have to pay for a position instead of delivering service, and instead of being of service. And I think especially in the dementia world, it can do a big injustice when people are out there trying to control the market. I think the best way to control the market still is word of mouth, and hearing what people are saying about different services, products, and tools. And people have to, if they're going to use Google, they have to dig deeper. But some of the problem is they don't know the terms either, which again, I'll give a plug for Dementia Map, is one of the things we're trying to work with. But you guys are talking about a lot of different terms, just types of different dementias that people don't even know about. And you're open to collaborating with everybody. Like you said, you're the audience is your world, and that's the way it should be. Businesses, there isn't a sector that doesn't need this information, from the very young to the very old, and in all different professions. So thank you for that advice. Stephen, how about you? You had a comment, and I wanted to ask you that same question as well. So
just like Bonnie said, we want to educate them in a sense. There's definitely life after dementia. My biggest thing too is I want them to know I didn't put my life on hold. I know some people hit a pause. I hit the fast forward. At that point, the best time to do something is now. When my wife and I were talking about going to Egypt one day, I booked a trip 2 days later, and we left for Egypt 4 days later. Most people spend 6 months trying to plan a trip like that. So, I want to do, the best I can. I do recommend when, somebody gets diagnosed, they should get some of their affairs in order, get their living trust and their will, while they're cognitive and they can make all those decisions or whatnot. That's very important. But I also want to remind them there is quality of life. Quality of life is extremely important. You've got to realize you don't have to stop doing some of the things you were doing before. You just have to change how you're doing things. An example, I used to be able to play golf. I'm not a great golfer, but I enjoy doing it. But when I was diagnosed and I started playing, I was getting super frustrated because I'd lose my ball, I'd lose count, and I felt like I'm not going to ever play golf again. until somebody made a simple recommendation. Stephen, why don't you tee off last instead of teeing off first or second? Because that was the problem, is I would tee off first. I hit my ball. 3 other guys hit their balls. But the problem is, because they hit their 3 balls, I had 4 balls. I was on my brain, where somebody says, just tee off last. And then when you give your score, if we know you got a 5, we're just going to write a 5 when you say a 4. So we had that conversation. So I didn't have to give it up. I just had to change how I was doing things. So you want to still do the things you love. And you hear sometimes dementia signals end of life. No. It signals just change of life. So you can still do those things that you love. So again, don't let somebody tell you you can't do something. Let them know that you still want to do it. And there's ways that you can still do that by adjusting. So like Bonnie said, we want to give them hope when they get that diagnosis, because a lot of times one of the first things when you Google is you hear 4 to 8 years. Once you get a diagnosis, it's 4 to 8 years. So I was already like clicking my brains about what did I need to do in that time frame. Well, I just started on 10 years, and I said, I'm really going to screw up that average because I'm shooting for a good 30 or 40 years. So, I'm a retired banker, so I'm going to throw off that math on that calculation, because most people are getting diagnoses when it's totally obvious, stage 7, if you go, the 1 through 7, or stage 6. So again, I want to let these people, especially those that with early diagnosis, they're still alive. You just need to make some changes. And the important thing is you have to self-educate yourself, because you're going to be amazed how people are going to ask you questions, or even your caregiver or spouse. You're going to need to educate them on how you need to be cared for. So you can see everybody's head shaking. I know everybody else has another comment on that. So I'll stop so Brian and others can share.
No, that was great information. And the age variable, that drives me bonkers too, from the doctors, because I know so many of you that are living so much longer. I also appreciate the fact that you mentioned, hey, you do need to get your affairs in order, but you know what? Everybody should be getting their affairs in order when they're 18 years old, period. And this shouldn't be a scary end of life thing. This should be about a smart living type thing. And I'm going to put a plug in for Compassion and Choices. They actually have a health directive that is free. You can go ahead and go through it. And it talks about, well, if I get this, how do I want to live? If I have this and this, how do I want to live? What are the choices I want people to make for me? Very helpful. And I think for much more than just dementia as well. But I found that really very helpful to add to the healthcare directives there. Anybody else have any more comments? Brian?
I have a suggestion for the medical world.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody's coming in to find out if they do have some sort of cognitive disability, they go through the testing, they get their diagnosis, and pretty much that's about it. Why not have someone who is living with a dementia-related illness be part of that information and sit down with that newly diagnosed person who has no idea what they're going to do or not do, and kind of have a handbook sort of thing. And I think that from the get-go right now, instead of just receiving a diagnosis and, a pat on the back and good luck with that, have someone else there to explain it to them, someone that's living it. They are truly the experts that they can give that information to that newly diagnosed person.
Well, it's an interesting concept. My guess is right away they're going to be worried about legalities. What if they say something wrong? And that comes back to bite us in the butt. But again, I think that they can easily refer out to get connected. Even like with Dementia Mentors that's out there. But I mean, they're packed too with people. A lot of the mentees turn into mentors. They turn into advocates because they got that hand to lift them up. I think it's a brilliant idea and something that hospitals and clinics should look into. And, that might even be another great way to be able to, I know you were looking at getting more of dementia minds set up around the world. Maybe they're set up through clinics, and then they can have their hand, in it a little bit more. But I think, I get so tired of people worrying about the legality instead of life. Can't we support people in living life better? There's always going to be somebody out there that's going to sue, but that's going to happen. I find in this community, though, people are just so thankful for the information. That's the last thing on their list. They know that you're doing the best. The other thing that I worry about with what you recommended, because I've seen this a lot, Brian, is I could see them leveraging people with dementia too much to the point where it pushes down their quality of life because, it's a full-time job and the pressure is on. So I think it has to be done in a fair way that doesn't cause stress and exhaustion to the person with dementia. If they're compensated or if it's a rotation. But I've seen that a lot where people feel a little bit too much pressure. And they don't know how to back off because they like what they're doing and they want to be helpful. But that's always kind of sad in my heart. Bonnie?
I just wanted to add that, just that list of resources, just the list of resources or, that alone would give you hope. I know that when my husband had heart surgery, he got a referral to a social worker because depression comes along with heart conditions, maybe a referral to a psychologist that is trained in medical, can't think of the right word to use right now, but all of that, I just came home. These things, you're so caught up in the diagnosis and trying to sort it out that those things didn't enter my mind. I just know that easier steps can be, taken if in the beginning education was provided. I didn't even know what white matter disease was, and my daughter and I left going, well, what the hell is that? So we went home and looked it up and we're like, ooh, I don't like that.
I didn't know what white matter disease was until you started, talking about what it was. So when I got that diagnosis, I said, oh, Bonnie's got that. So I can talk to her, or, it's just.
Bonnie, why don't you tell people, because there's probably a lot of people listening that don't know what white matter is.
Well, what white matter disease is, which we'll probably hear more and more about it, it's deep down the feather fine arteries in the brain, the subcortical arteries of the brain have what's called not TIAs. I know even medical people want to say TIAs, but they're silent strokes. They're actual damaging strokes that accumulate over time, causing MCI, vascular dementia secondary to the white matter disease, that type of thing. And it's controllable for the most part if you live a stress-free life. If someone wants to get out and write a book on how to actually do that, and then B, medications, cholesterol, blood pressure, blood thinner medicines, that kind of a thing. So, and it's not like Alzheimer's where that can be harder to be diagnosed. Ours is an MRI and it's like, oh, wow, you have a lot of lesions, deep within your brain. So I'm assuming that's what happened to Brian finally when he, had another MRI, and then his diagnosis too came along. And oftentimes vascular is mixed by like 70% by the later stages with an Alzheimer's diagnosis.
Yeah.
Well, and that is one of the things too, the names, the terms, the types are constantly changing. And so it's not uncommon for a person's diagnosis to change. And that's something that they don't prepare you for either. And I hear people that's like, it takes the brown paper bag and dumps everything out on the floor again. And you're starting from scratch, trying to figure out, okay, what do I live? How do I adapt? What's this about? And we all know that stress isn't good for this disease. So why are we setting people up? That's one of my biggest questions. Why are we setting people up? We can do better. And, with organizations like yours, we are doing better. So I want to thank you all for your time today. Anybody else have any last minute comments? Otherwise, we'll go ahead and wind up here. Okay.
I wish people would stop using the term Alzheimer's. Mm-hmm. That's all I got to say.
Yep. Well, it's one of those common terms that's out there. I think people are starting to understand that it is just one form. There's so that's a good thing with that.
Yeah.
Now, people can get a hold of the National Council of Dementia Minds by just going to dementiaminds.org. That's dementiaminds.org. And you can always email Brenda that can get a hold of anybody here at brenda@dementiaminds.org. To our listeners, I would like to say, share this. This is good information. This is hopeful information. We all know somebody who's dealing with this. If it's not ourselves, it's a loved one, a friend, a coworker, a neighbor. Don't keep information to yourself. It doesn't do anybody any good. Knowledge is better shared. Reach out to them, become part of the group, get involved. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to share.
Yeah.
It's time to rethink, renew, and reimagine retirement. Hey everybody, Jared Sebesta here, host of Retire Repurposed. Now, this podcast is about the non-financial parts of retirement, which many times can be even more challenging than the financial. We believe retirement is not the end, rather the beginning of what could be the most impactful, purposeful, and fulfilling season of a person's life. So don't retire, become repurposed. To listen now, search Retire Repurposed on your favorite podcast platform, Senior Resource, or Life Audio.